Hello YouTube, welcome to episode 74 of the Card Combo Show with me, Chocobilly. And they say lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, but in this episode it strikes 5 times in the same place. Yes, I'm doing an episode dedicated entirely to Lightning, the character. I'm going to be looking at Lightning from Opus 4, Opus 5, Opus 10, the Opus 10 starter deck, and finally Opus 15, the only non-lightning Lightning. Yeah. Right, first up we have Opus 4 Lightning. Haste, and when lightning enters the field or attacks, choose one forward your opponent controls. If you control a category 13 character other than lightning, dull it. Discard one card named Lightning, remove lightning from the game, then play lightning onto the field, dull. So it's an interesting ability, that last one, because of the fact that it's ultimately the same as an S ability. The only difference is the fact that because it's not worded, or rather doesn't have the little S icon, means that it is still considered an action ability and can be affected by things that screw with action ability, sorry. Yeah, just kind of strange, but ultimately it's a pretty decent card either way. So, Hope, it means that when lightning both enters the field and attacks, you can dull something out of the way because you have Hope on the field. It's a 13 character, and when an active forward becomes dull, it then also becomes frozen due to Hope's effect. Then you've got Snow, so when Snow enters the field, you may pay X. If you do so, search for one card named Lightning of cost X or less, play it onto the field. Now, this will ultimately mean that you're paying 9 to play both Snow and Lightning onto the field, but if your opponent has 2 forwards and you have none, and all of a sudden you accelerate to 2 forwards, one of which has haste and can dull both of your opponent's forwards out of the way, that's a pretty good push for you. If you have a means of giving Snow haste as well, that's even better. It's a pretty high cost, but that's definitely not the worst thing you can do, and something that both Lightning and Ice really need to make use of is consistency, and Snow is very much that. And yes, you're going to see that card a lot in this episode anyway. Snow, yeah, when a forward you control attacks, choose one forward opponent controls, dull it. So when lightning enters and attacks, you ultimately get to dull out 3 things. Pretty simple, but effective. Go-Go. So using Lightning's ability to remove her from the game and then replay her onto the field would also work with Go-Go. There's no real good reason to do this, but it's kind of funny. So it means that if your opponent's trying to get rid of Go-Go before they get rid of Lightning, you can use Lightning's S to remove Lightning to then remove Go-Go, but Go-Go will get removed first, then be replayed, and then Lightning will get removed and be replayed. It's just silly, but fun nonetheless. Rubal Akbel. When a Rubal Akbel enters the field, you may, don't care about that, at the beginning of your main phase 1 during each of your turns, choose one backup in your break zone, add it to your hand. There is exactly 1 lightning backup as of recording this video, so it means that you could, if you really wanted to, I'm not entirely sure why, have that lightning backup in this deck alongside this lightning, meaning that you could use Rubal Akbel every turn to get that lightning back to your hand, and then have that protection online for lightning, because maybe lightning actually is screwing with your opponent's deck quite a bit. Every time she attacks, she's dulling something, and when she re-enters, it basically means that even if your opponent's got some forwards and not even really attacking lightning, you can still be using Lightning's S ability at the end of your opponent. Sorry, it's not an S ability, is it? Using Lightning's ability at the end of your opponent's turn just to remove Lightning, player back onto the field, to dull out one of your opponent's forwards, and then when it gets to your main phase, you get that Lightning back to your hand in your turn, so then you've still got to use it on your turn as well if you wanted. So pretty good, actually. Alright, next we've got Opus 5 Lightning, 2 CP 5k, haste, and at the end of the turn, return Lightning to its owner's hand. Pretty much it. So obviously it works nicely with something like Leviathan. You play Lightning onto the field, and even if you don't attack with Lightning, despite her having haste, you can just pass your turn, Lightning comes back to your hand, you get to minus 9k something, which, to be honest, for paying 2 CP isn't the worst, and I know we always say that actually you're paying 4 CP because Lightning coming out of your hand is 2 CP as well technically, but Lightning's going back to your hand. So actually it is only 2 CP, so 2 CP to minus 9k something, not the worst. And yeah, ultimately she is haste as well, so you could attack with her, hopefully get opponent damage through, and then return her to your hand, minus 9k something. Or, no, never mind. Skeleton, so you keep on getting lightning back to hand, which means you can keep on replaying her, which means you can keep on adding counters to Skeleton, and once you get to 3 counters, you can then choose a forward of 4 or less and break it, which isn't too bad. Glauca, so Lightning obviously only costs 2, so having Glauca on the field means she'd only cost 1, which is kind of nice. It means that you're getting 1 or 2 CP back to your hand every turn, despite only playing the 1, even though the 2 CP is still the same because it's the same card. So you're just using 1 CP effectively, but it means that if Lightning is able to keep on swinging through, that's not too bad. And you can combo that with something like No-No, which means that actually, if you're playing Lightning onto the field for 1, attacking with her, and then she gets to come back to your hand, you haven't paid anything, really. All you've done is attack, which is pretty good. And it doesn't have to be, the backup you paid with Lightning to reactivate. You could also use this alongside some other abilities as well on your backup lineup. Ultimately, pretty fun. Snow, again, yeah, just playing Snow into this Lightning just to get the Lightning back to your hand. So you're getting a little bit of recursion off the cost. What this basically just does is converts 2 CP into more 2 CP, but it's kind of strange because if you're playing Snow and then you're paying 2 CP, that's a total of 6 CP, which can't be paid entirely with your backups. Technically not true, because you can use I can't remember the name of the backup, but it can be put into the break zone to generate CP. But either way, you probably aren't going to be generating 6 CP with your 5 backups, which you have to discard. Which means that Lightning then coming back to your hand is actually, it's kind of neutral in a weird way. But again, it's another way to be able to hopefully get some more board presence, attack through to your opponent, and then Lightning comes back to your hand, which means you kind of get that 2 CP back you paid for her anyway. And what's better is actually that she searches her out of the deck as well, so it's not a card coming from hand even. So in a weird way, it's kind of it's just converting 2 CP to another 2 CP. Maybe a good way to color fix. Jake, yeah, Lightning comes onto the field. She gains plus 4k from Jake. She is now a 9k haste for only 2 CP. With Glauca, she'd only be 1 CP. And then at the end of the turn, she comes back to your hand, which means when you replay her the following turn, Jake again will take effect, and you get to make her 9k and rinse and repeat for as long as Jake or Lightning survives. Right, now we've got 6 CP Lightning from Opus 10. When Lightning enters the field, you may search for up to 2 card name Odin and add them to your hand, and then pay 1 Lightning, a Dull, and remove 2 card name Odin from the break zone from the game. Choose one forward, break it. So not too bad, and ultimately a nice way to just be able to break something. And she's actually one of the earliest instances we see of something utilizing the break zone as a form of payment. So the likes of Stern and Mashery probably took inspiration from something, I guess, maybe. But either way, it's just for a Lightning and Dulling of a forward isn't the worst thing in the world, and the card itself does give you the fuel to be able to use that ability as well. So, Odin. Obviously, this Lightning gets you lots of Odins to your hand, also once Odin's in the break zone, and this Odin becomes cheaper for every Odin in your break zone, so ultimately it just becomes a lot easier to play and kill something with. Aquila, sorry. I like to say Aquila, but I'm awkward. When you cast a summon, gain a crystal. This effect will only trigger once per turn. And then when Aquila enters the field, choose one Lightning summon in your break zone, add it to your hand. So again, just utilizing the fact that there's going to be summons in your break zone, whilst also utilizing just casting summons. And if you're running maybe, I've forgotten her name now, the Lightning Legend 2 CP. It's on the tip of my brain. I can't quite remember. You know the one I'm talking about. The one that can remove your own forwards to gain crystals. Just a nice way to be able to kind of compound on that as well. But ultimately, yeah, just a nice way to use more summons whilst returning summons to your hand and getting more value for it. Go. So you pay a Lightning and Dull, remove 2 card name Odin from the break zone. Now you get to break 2 forwards because again it's an action ability. Go doesn't care about the cost of the action ability. All he'll do is mimic it. So you get to kill even more things for only 1 CP effectively, which isn't too bad. Halicarnassus. So they have the ability to Dull, discard 2 summons, choose one forward, break it. So similarly, you can put 2 Odins into the break zone and Dull Halicarnassus, break a forward. Then you can use Lightning, pay Lightning and Dull, remove those 2 summons you discarded through Halicarnassus. You then get to break another forward. Not too bad. Une. So, I mean, obviously Lightning is getting you summons to hand, which you can then cast using Une. That will flicker Lightning to then get you even more Odins to your hand. Obviously you don't want to rinse your deck from Odins, but you know, there's a good chance you could be running maybe 15 Odins, who knows. There are decks that do similar sorts of things with Shivas and Ifrits, so why not do it with Odin as well? And it means that you're also going to be getting those summons into the break zone ready for Lightning to use to then Dull and break something as well. It's just a fun way just to keep on getting more summons to your hand and just giving yourself more cards, because you know, not all the Odins are high costed. You can play one of maybe the 2 CP or 3 CP Odins, which then flickers Lightning, which then gets you 2 cards to hand, which is really good value. Mashery, again, obviously utilizing the break zone to cast not to cast summon, sorry, to get more action abilities, but realistically it also reduces the cost of the Odins you'll be casting, and some of the Odins can reduce their cost as you saw earlier, so it's just even more efficient ways to be able to play things that can break forwards. There's also the Odin whose cost gets reduced as well, similar to the Ifrit and other forwards from, summons from that opus, I'm going to say 13, 14 maybe. But yeah, the more damage you take, they get a reduction in cost. With Mastery, they become even cheaper. And yeah, Lightning gets them to your hand, and then puts them in the break zone, and then you can either use Mastery or Lightning's ability to be able to do something. Why do I even bother saying the name? I'm so sick of the word lightning now. She's a 4 CP 8k. During this turn, if you attacked with 2 or more forwards you controlled, the cost of playing lightning onto the field is reduced by 3. And Crushing Blow S and a dull. Choose up to 2 forwards, dull them, and draw 1 card. So, it's alright. It's not the most playable card. There's not really room for her in any decks, really. But her becoming a 1 CP if you do attack with a couple of forwards is kind of nice, I guess. And her S ability really isn't the worst, because she refunds the S that you used to play her with, and you get to dull 2 things as well, which isn't the worst. So, yep, Hope again, similar to the first one we looked at, it means that you can ultimately, is only forwards, isn't it? Yeah. It means that you can ultimately dull and freeze 2 forwards your opponent controls, which is always nice. No, so maybe you attacked with a couple of forwards, they then make Lightning only become a 1 CP forward, you then play Lightning onto the field, and you know, with all these attacks happening and you're activating backups, realistically it means that actually the CP casts Lightning, even though you're having to dull the 1 CP to do it, because you've reactivated things through attacking forwards, it means that Lightning hasn't really cost you anything aside from the card out of hand. But Gamnon, now this is obviously a kind of a bit of a weird one, but if you're gonna be attacking with your forwards, chances are your opponent's going to have some forwards that they're going to be blocking with. So using Begamnon to actually make it so that you get to choose which forward has to block can help you quite a bit, actually, because if your opponent's got this one big forward that they're obviously going to block with, but you want to attack so you get Lightning onto the field, you can cast Begamnon to make it so that the other forward that maybe is going to die to attackers will die, and then you can party attack with 2 forwards. And even if your forwards do die, it doesn't matter, because Lightning states during this turn, if you attacked with 2 or more forwards you controlled, so they don't have to be on the field anymore for any reason. As long as you attack to 2 forwards, you're good to go. Chocobo, so just making it so that you can attack with forwards of any element and make them party attack is always quite nice. And generally, if you've got 2 forwards, you want 2 forwards to attack. But again, your opponent's got blockers. Party attacking might be the best way through, but having multiple elements can be a bit awkward sometimes. So making it so that they can both party attack through Chocobo might be a way around it. And Rebel Akbal, again, is similar to what I said earlier, but this time, actually, you're going to be getting quite a bit of value, because you can use Rebel Akbal to get a Lightning card back to hand, and then maybe on your opponent's turn, you use Lightning to then dull out 2 of your opponent's forwards. You get to draw a card, and then the following, or when you go to your main phase again in your turn, you then get a Lightning back to hand. So actually, you're drawing a card off of this ability, and you're getting Lightning back to hand, so you can effectively use this every turn. If Lightning's just going to be this tool, which, if she only costs you 1 CP just to have this effect, isn't the worst thing. Now, again, obviously, Rebel Akbal needs to stick around, and his effect is so potent just to get a card back every turn. Chances are he's not going to be there for very long, but either way, it's a nice way just to keep on dulling out your opponent's forward so they can't attack, whilst you can attack through, but keep on getting more cards to hand at the same time. Rosa, so maybe attacking with things, like I said earlier with No, if you're attacking with things and reactivating to then play more things, Rosa might be a good card, and if you're attacking with things, that means Lightning will also become cheaper as well. So yeah, being able to reactivate your backups, playing more things, casting lots of things, playing Lightning onto the field, for only 1 CP, that is only a 1 CP cast for a fairly sizable forward. Yeah, just to be able to get all these things back onto the field for really, really cheap, and then hopefully get to hit Rosa's cast 5 effect to then just reveal a character off the top of your deck and play it onto the field. And finally, we have probably the best Lightning. I love this Lightning. I made a mono ice turbo discard deck recently, which I feel really bad about playing. I really do, but it was really fun. And she's just so incredibly strong. But she is a good example of how to do kind of passive damage to your opponent, but having it kind of metered in a good way, because she does have a prerequisite that you have to meet that is you know, not the best for you either. So she does have a drawback, but I still think it's really, really good. So yeah, she is only 1 CP, but she has 9k in power. The cost required to cast lightning is increased by 1 for each card in your opponent's hand. So obviously very much influencing you wanting to make your opponent discard a lot of cards. And then if you have 2 cards or less in your hand, lightning gains plus 1000 power and haste. So again, influencing you wanting to get cards out of your hand. And then at the end of each of your turns, if each player has no cards in their hands, lightning deals your opponent 1 point of damage. And I've never seen so many people play so many inefficient plays just to be able to get lightning's effect. I was like, yeah, I'm going to discard 2 cards to play this 3 CP forward, and then I'm going to discard 2 more cards to play this other 3 CP backup, and then I'm going to use lightning's effects. It's hilarious, and I've done it myself as well. The problem is it works. If you look at it as discarding a card to deal your opponent point of damage, that's like one of the most efficient ways to do it. And her having plus 1000 in haste when you go to a low hand size is really good anyway. And the fact that she's only 1 CP, this card is brilliant. One of my favourites in Opus 15, I think. So as you, Dragon Seas Soryu, you can discard 1 card and choose 1 character freezer, or discard 3 ice cards, choose 1 forward, break it. So yeah, just a nice way just to be able to get rid of cards from your hand to make it so that lightning can deal damage to your opponent and also get bigger as well. You can discard a couple of cards and freeze a couple of your opponent's characters, unless you, I don't know, I mean, you can use this on both your opponent's turn and your turn as well, but if you play lightning onto the field and your opponent has nothing that is dull, that'll be pretty surprising. So yeah, being able to just discard a card and freeze one of your opponent's backups as well is super useful. And then ultimately, if your opponent does have a troublesome forward, just discard 3 cards, break it, and then attack with lightning, deal a point of damage, pass your turn, deal a point of damage. Snow, yeah, I think this is where this Snow really shines, because one of Lightning's drawbacks is her initial costing. If your opponent doesn't, or your opponent does have cards in hand, you haven't been able to make them discard too much, that kind of sucks. But being able to play Snow to then search us and only have to pay the 1 to play her onto the field is really good. And if you do have a low hand size as well, she becomes big and has haste. So even if you're paying 5 for this Snow to then get this Lightning onto the field from your deck as well, and she is a 10k haste, that's a lot for your opponent to have to handle. And then they can see, I'm going to start discarding really soon, and they have to really start thinking about, they have to, if they have a lot of cards on hand, they want to keep that hand size up, because if you're going to start making them discard, they need to not go down to 0, so they want to keep their hand size realistically above 3. And if they do start casting things, if it's not breaking lightning, then it won't be too hard for you to get them to 0 cards to then hit lightning's prerequisite. So I think, like, if your opponent's got a couple of forwards and then you play Snow into lightning, your opponent goes, oh dear, it's a lot for them to take on board, and they need to get rid of lightning stat. But another excellent way to be able to search her out of the deck, and it doesn't matter how many cards you've got on hand, because Bartz will give her haste anyway. So just using Bartz just to get a big old 9k onto the field that has haste is just really, really efficient. I mean, she doesn't even have to attack, she just comes onto the field and is there as a nasty blocker as well. Previously, I think Bartz had, maybe one other card, which is Umaro. Not Umaro, sorry, not Bartanlus. Oh, what's his name? The Frankenstein's monster dude. I can't remember people's names today, to be fair, that's pretty standard. But you know the one I mean, the one that is with Lugay. Oh, what's his name? I think I'm thinking of Bartandalus because Bart's is there. But yeah, either way, I think he was the only other big forward that really Bart could get onto the field. So yeah, having Bart's come onto the, having Bart's attack, then finding lightning, bringing that onto the field is a lot for your opponent to take on board as well. Not to mention the fact that, you know, even if you aren't that low on cards, just being able to threaten your opponent with such a big forward so quickly, yeah. Puck! Lightning dies, oh well, just play Puck, bring it back onto the field. Simple as that, really. Lakshmi, Lady of the Bliss. Now this is interesting because this is all about how stacking can work, or how manipulating the stack to your benefit really is a big thing in this game. So you can pass the turn with no cards in hand, and that will trigger Lightning's effect. As you're passing turn, that will also trigger Lakshmi's effect to, at the end of each of your turns, draw a card. So what you would want to do is stack Lakshmi first, and then Lightning. So Lightning will resolve, you've got no cards, your opponent takes a point of damage. Then Lakshmi will get your card to hand, and you still have a card into your next turn or your opponent's turn as well. Similar sort of thing for wear rate as well. Maybe you want to have both these cards on the field. So you've made your opponent discard this turn, you're going into your end phase with no cards, and then you stack it Where I, Lakshmi, Lightning triggers, deals opponent damage, then Where I gets you a card, Lakshmi gets you a card, and you go into your opponent's turn with still 2 cards, despite the fact that you managed to use Lightning to deal your opponent damage. Nasty. Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure if that Lightning really deserved her own episode, if I'm perfectly honest, but I didn't really want to talk about this Ice Lightning card, and she is just super strong. But she's not super strong. She is good at what she does, and she fits the Dark archetype well, but it has a nice drawback. And another card that I actually meant to talk about in this was also the Opus, I'm gonna say 8 Squall, which gains haste as well. So actually having 2 haste ice cards, the only 2 haste ice cards, would be really good. And that card also is dependent on both yours and your opponent's hand sizes, so it might fit quite nicely with that as well. Maybe I'll throw up a little thing in it as well. But yeah, either way, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me, and I think as of recording this video, we just crested over 315 subscribers, and you know, it's just a steady trajectory upwards, which is fantastic. And it's good to know that you guys enjoy watching my stupid ideas in these videos, as well as my let's plays and other videos that I slowly work my way through. Sorry I don't get to as many of them as often as I would like. You know, life is a thing. But either way, thank you so much for watching, guys. Be safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next one.